Hello friends of YouTube, welcome to Mac Truck Bookstop. Mike here, and today we're talking about the Book of Chameleons by José Eduardo Agualusa, who is from Angola. And this is a country I know almost nothing about, so if I were to do a second read of this, I would certainly, one, learn a little bit more about Angola, and two, you're going to need to read it twice probably to completely understand what you just read. It's one of those kind of books. So if there are any spoilers in this review, they're going to be first-time read spoilers rather than second-time read spoilers, which I would actually need to read it twice to be able to inform you of all of the intricacies of what happens in this book. It's one, in some ways it kind of reminds me of A Study in Scarlet by Sherlock Holmes. In other ways, it's very influenced by Borges. It actually opens with a quote by Borges, which is, "If I were to be born again, I'd like to be something completely different. I'd like to be Norwegian, or Persian perhaps. Not Uruguayan though. That'd feel too much like just moving down the street." And this is the first time I've actually reflected on this opening quote, but it is pretty clear what it relates to. You have a chameleon. No, not a chameleon. This is why this translation is confusing. There's a gecko. There's a gecko living in an old house in Angola, and he's observing a man named Felix Ventura, who's an albino Angolan, and Felix Ventura makes his living creating pasts for other people who want him to recreate their genealogies or even recreate photos and newspaper clippings, basically so they can become a different person or have a different past. So that's what he is hired by often rich clients to do, and supports himself in this kind of old mansion with strange sort of portraits around. There's one of Frederick Douglass, for example, that kind of has a resemblance to him. But again, you're viewing all of this from the perspective of a gecko who appears to be like a reincarnated soul because he has dreams and memories, and the entire story, since you're viewing it from the perspective of this gecko, it takes place inside the house. You only ever leave the house through memories and dreams and things that the people who visit this house requesting the services of Felix Ventura ask for. So that's kind of just the setup of the story. Why did I say this is a weird translation? The Book of Chameleons. It does relate actually to something that's said, but for most of it I was like, it's narrated by a gecko. Why is it called the Book of Chameleons? In Portuguese, or in the original language that is most spoken in Angola, this is called O Vendedor de Passados, which roughly translates the seller of pasts, or you could translate it like the genealogy seller or something like that. It's would be closer. Seller of pasts. So that is the basic. You also have this woman who's involved, a mysterious foreigner who's a client of Felix Ventura. And at the end of the story, I guess, again, this is a first-time read spoiler, they're all kind of wrapped up in some kind of mysterious plot intrigue that also has something to do with the government, but who is who and their motivations are really the part of this book that would take the most brain power to uncover. And also, again, knowing a little something about Angola would help as well on a second read. I know virtually nothing about Angola. That being said, it was a really interesting book. A lot of the way through it, I wasn't sure. I was like, where's this going? But the end of the book definitely made me feel like, ooh, this is like one of those films that you watch and the ending makes you realize people weren't who you thought they were, and you got to go back and figure out what happened. So that was a real highlight of the book, was just the ending and what it all built up to. Now, another thing you may have noticed is that this is the third book in this Reading the World project that has the book of title. And the awesome thing about that, which was totally unintentional, is that all three of those books are connected with this being the centerpiece book that connects them. I'll explain. We have the opening quote from Borges, and we read the Book of Imaginary Beings by Jorge Luis Borges. This opens with a quote from that and is obviously very inspired by Borges's approaches to memory and time that you can find in a lot of his works. The other connection is that there is a mention of the Book of Disquiet, a specific, loving, explicit mention of the Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa. And I really want to highlight that one because that is one of the videos on this project that's gotten the most attention. After I posted it, I think maybe 15 or 20 people subscribed, which is like almost a quarter of my subscribers at this point. So if you want to read something that's inspired by the Book of Disquiet, this book actually calls it, one of the characters calls it the best, or like the most fascinating work of Portuguese literature, because it highlights how every common small life of ours, of human beings, is a rich and vast, wonderful place, magical place. So yeah, I had to bring that to the forefront. Yeah, so talking more about the plot of the book, again, there's not a whole lot I can really even say for sure. That's not a spoiler, but I think I've already said enough that if you would be interested in this book, you can make up your mind if it's something you'd want to read. I definitely recommend it, especially if you like either of the other books, the Book of Disquiet or the Book of Imaginary Beings. Both have connections to this book, and they're all titled the Book of something, so I thought that was really interesting. And that even works in the translations. The translations of all these books also translate that way. Even though they're not exact translations, like this is, actually no, this one doesn't. I'm wrong. O Vendedor de Passados does not translate that way, but so I guess it's only a connection in English, but still, it's fun. Yeah, so there were some specific moments that I had kind of set. I already talked about the Fernando Pessoa one. Yeah, so one of my favorite little parts in this, or I guess it's multiple parts, but is the dreams that the gecko has are kind of like more realistic and present plot points in some ways, and seem more lifelike and more commonplace than the actual events occurring that aren't dreams. I thought that was a really interesting aspect of the book. As far as, you know, other things, it's like I just don't feel like there's a lot more I need to say. There's also references in the book to 1001 Nights. There's references to a lot of other literature. So I think that while it may not be the most brilliant book I've ever read, or the most interconnected story, most interesting story, it is definitely worth it is worth a read for anyone, I think, who's interested in these particular authors that he's influenced by, or if you want to read something from this particular region of Angola that you wouldn't really expect. I certainly wouldn't have, I mean, I guess it's kind of a projection or stereotype, but I wouldn't have expected this kind of book to come out of Angola. So it's a pretty cool, unexpected thing that you can hand to somebody and be like, wow, yeah, I don't think a lot of people, at least in the United States, know much about Angola. So it's a good one to just give to somebody out of nowhere and be like, hey, check this out, and recommend it. It's a pretty weird story. I feel like it could be filmable. It could be. And like I said, there is kind of this political subtext that emerges later in the book about Angola that maybe some context would be helpful, but it's very much, you don't need it to enjoy it or to get you interested in what's going on. You can kind of understand just by what happens. I don't think it's necessary to be a huge expert on Angolan history or politics to really get where it's going with it. And as far as themes of the book, I do think that there is quite a lot open to interpretation, but as far as general themes, we can talk about memory being a sort of uh, unreliable trait of human beings, and we know it is. There's almost nothing more unreliable than our memories, especially in today's world where we don't really develop it. There is also a theme of political and societal memory. This ties into the country's memory as well. There are themes of dreams versus reality. What is a dream versus reality, and how dreams create reality, or how a fictional story of someone's past or a fictional place can become real just by being invented. It produces a real thing. This is, of course, a Borges story as well. That is clearly has influenced that part of this book. Other themes that I could point out is the idea of the double. There's a part later in the book where the gecko is portrayed as a potential double, where other characters are possibly doubles of others. Yeah, there's a lot in there, and again, I'd really need a second read to start talking about the specific things and not mix up character names and place names and things, but that's literary analysis, which I guess I've kind of moved away from attempting on these first on these videos that I make right after reading the book, because it's very few books that I am able to analyze on a first read. I think my first video I did for this channel, The True Deceiver, which actually I think is a nice pair for this book, because both of them also take on the theme of lying and how lying is a necessity for all of us, and what is the place of lies and the truth in our lives, and how can we even be sure one or the other. Like, obviously, yeah, there are things that we can say are true, that we all kind of agree are true, I think. And even if you kind of take that that political value centered approach of like true is true, right is right, wrong is wrong, well, I think we can all agree that there are certain parts of life where the truth becomes ambiguous. If it weren't that way, we wouldn't need courts. We wouldn't need arbiters in anything. We wouldn't need referees in sports. So it's kind of a thing where no matter what your stance on whether truth is malleable or not, there are many areas of life and many times in life where the truth becomes not so certain. We get gray areas, and we all have to lie. Sometimes lying is the right thing, and it's not ever as simple as the truth will set you free. Anyway, I just totally got distracted there. I was saying that when I did the video for The True Deceiver, which was my first video, I went much more into literary analysis there because it was my third time reading the book. And I really wanted to talk, and my plan had been to do that kind of literary analysis for every book I read. Well, it would take me forever to get through all of these. I think a better approach, as I've kind of gone to, is read the book, make the video, give my first impressions on it, and whether I think it was worth my time or worth my time to read again, which I'd say this one is, even though it's not maybe the most brilliant book I've read. I mean, I still think, I don't think it tops its influences, but it certainly connects its influences in the interesting ways that I mentioned. And yeah, so I can say that it's worth it, but yeah, at this time I'm not going to do a whole literary analysis on it. But yeah, that being said, I hope you enjoyed the review on the Book of Chameleons, José Eduardo Agualusa, themes of memory, of lies and deception and truth, themes of, well, influences of Borges and Fernando Pessoa, and all presented in an Angolan context. Yeah, it was a great book. So the next book I'm planning to read now is not Ulysses, A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. This will be my first foray into James Joyce, and I hope to have it finished by June 16th, which is the day that Ulysses takes place, and have the video uploaded then. Though I'm not reading Ulysses yet, just this one to start with Joyce, and I hope to listen to some short stories from Dubliners while I'm doing so. And on top of that, I will probably be doing some shorter works before then, because I like to keep up the at least one book a week pace, and sometimes more. So actually I have been doing more, but that's just the way it goes because I love reading. But yeah, so we're going to do James Joyce, Portrait of an Artist of Young Man, next. Look forward to that on June 16th. And if I don't have it up by then, it's because I'm still working on it, which is probably understandable because I'm sure James Joyce is somewhat challenging, so I've heard. But I'm going in with a very positive attitude, looking forward to it, because I know he's a massive influence on a lot of authors I love, and the whole modernism in general. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and we'll continue to follow this project. Please feel free to comment. I appreciate all subscribes and likes and anyone who comments. So thanks again, and have a great day.